The Intel processor inside your laptop is still throttling your speed right now, and the Federal Trade Commission can't stop it. Somewhere in the silicon under your fingertips, a hidden governor is deciding how fast you're allowed to go. Not your battery, not your cooling fan, a number buried in firmware that Intel controls and you never see. Every modern Intel chip ships with something called Running Average Power Limit, RAPL for short. Officially, it's a safety feature. It watches your CPU's temperature and power draw, and it throttles clock speed before you overheat or drain your battery too fast. That's the story on the box. That's what the spec sheet tells you. A protective measure built for your benefit, invisible by design so you never have to think about it. Here's what the spec sheet doesn't say. RAPL isn't just watching thermals. It's logging a continuous telemetry stream. Voltage, frequency, power draw, time-stamped and tied to your chip's persistent hardware identifier, and using it to enforce power limits that have nothing to do with your safety. Two identical chips, same silicon, same fab run, can be locked to different top speeds, not because one is damaged, because Intel's microcode told it to be slower. This is called binning, and it's been confirmed in leaked Intel documentation and independent bank tests for years. The chip you paid for isn't the chip you got. It's the chip Intel's firmware decided to let you have. The Federal Trade Commission has actually looked at this. In 2024, cybersecurity researchers and hardware analysts flagged Intel's opaque power management microcode to regulators, alongside the 13th and 14th generation instability crisis. Chips silently degrading themselves under voltage, the firmware itself was setting too high. The FTC has open antitrust authority over exactly this kind of undisclosed performance manipulation. Congress has asked Intel directly on the record to explain how these limits are set and disclosed to consumers. Intel's answer every time: microcode is proprietary. Firmware behavior is a trade secret. The FTC can subpoena documents. It cannot force Intel to publish the governing algorithm because intellectual property law protects exactly the kind of code that's throttling your machine right now. The agency meant to protect you already lost this fight before it started. And here's the part nobody reported. The regulator already knew the workaround wouldn't work before the request was even filed. Trade secret protection doesn't just block outsiders, it blocks the FTC's own technical staff from independently verifying what the microcode actually does in the field. They can ask Intel to describe it. They cannot audit it. The audit trail exists. It sits on Intel's servers, not the government's. So the mechanism survives because of a loophole nobody has to hide. It's already legal. Firmware updates pushed through Windows Update or your OEM's BIOS utility rewrite RAPL's limits after you've already bought the chip, without your explicit consent, framed as stability improvements. You agreed to this the moment you clicked accept on a driver update. There's no separate consent for silently lowering your ceiling. The telemetry handshake between your CPU and Intel's power management firmware happens below your operating system, before Windows or macOS ever sees a data point. You cannot disable it without voiding your warranty and risking permanent instability. It's not a setting. It's the floor the rest of your computer stands on, and it's still running. Remember the fact you started with: the chip in your hand isn't running at the speed it's capable of. It's running at the speed Intel's telemetry says you're allowed. That gap is real, it's measurable, and independent silicon analysts have clocked identical dies performing differently based on nothing but firmware revision. What this means for you: every benchmark you've ever trusted, every up-to-clock speed on a box, was never a promise. It was a ceiling Intel reserves the right to lower remotely after your money has already cleared. Your thermal paste, your cooling, your case airflow, all of that matters less than a number you'll never be shown, updated by a company with no obligation to tell you when it changes. So who benefits from a power limit nobody can see, enforced by code nobody can audit, on hardware you already own? Not you. Ask yourself why the one company capable of proving your chip is running at its true speed is the same company deciding in secret that it shouldn't.